A 1-minute hook, why Hemingway still cuts. Picture a young ambulance driver in World War I, 19, bleeding on a moonless Italian night, learning in a single explosion how cheap a life can be and how fierce and tender a love can feel when the world is falling apart. Then picture him in Spain, the sun hitting white stone, a bull's horn missing a man by a breath, a crowd learning with each pass that grace is something you earn when death is watching. Hemingway wrote like both those nights, pared down, unguarded, and brimming with what he chose not to say. If you let him, he will get under your skin not by telling you how to feel, but by handing you a glass of cold water and making you taste your own thirst. Hemingway in brief, the short, sharp life that made the sentences, origins and the outdoors. Born in 1899 in Oak Park, Illinois, Hemingway grew up between hymns and hunting, a mother who taught music and a father who taught him woods, water, and silence. The world he loved most was early morning, the weight of a fish on the line, the clean line of a horizon. The apprenticeship of brevity. At 17 he joined a newsroom. The rules were ruthless and perfect for him, short sentences, vigorous verbs, facts first. That training fused with his temperament. The prose he would become famous for was forged in the press, not the academy. War and the wound that never fully closed. In 1918, he volunteered as a Red Cross ambulance driver on the Italian front. He was wounded by mortar fire, spent months recovering, and learned what it meant to love intensely under the threat of loss. The sense that joy exists under a hanging sword would never leave his work. Paris, poverty, and the modernist lab. In the 1920s he moved to Paris with his first wife, Hadley. There, among Gertrude Stein, Ezra Pound, and Joyce, he was told to cut until the story stood like a bone. He learned to leave the meaning under the surface, the iceberg approach. Spain, bulls, ritual, and risk. Spain gave him ritual, bullfighting, wine, honor code. He saw in the matadors art a clean, precise confrontation with death, and ethic he adapted to writing, emotion without ornament, courage without speechmaking, love, loss, and the restlessness of success. He married and remarried, moved from Paris to Key West to Cuba, wrote, fished, hunted, and reported wars. Fame made him bigger, solitude made him honest. The best sentences always came from the quiet. War again, prizes, and the breaking point. He covered the Spanish Civil War and World War II, wrote novels that defined modern disillusionment, won the Pulitzer and the Nobel, survived plane crashes in Africa, and struggled with depression and illness. In 1961, he died by suicide in Idaho. The work, however, refused to die. What matters for us as readers is not the list of events but the shape they carved in him, a mind that distrusted big talk, a heart that trusted small decencies, and a style that treated sentiment as a precious metal to be carried without spillage. What lit the fuse? How Hemingway became a writer who could not look away. Journalism as discipline. The newsroom taught him to strip a sentence to its muscle and nerve. No padding, no sentimentality. Start with what happened. Then, if you must, let feeling enter like light at the end. The education of pain. War gave him not just wounds but clarity. People in danger don't have time for lies. He learned to respect what men and women do under pressure more than what they say about themselves in safety. Mentors and the Paris edit. Modernists pushed him to refine. Stein told him he was a lost generation, but she also showed him how repetition could be musical, how omission could be a form of honesty, and how nouns and verbs can carry more truth than adjectives. Ritual as meaning. Bullfighting, boxing, fishing. He wasn't just collecting hobbies, he was studying practices where skill and risk meet. He translated that into an ethic: do the thing cleanly, with courage, in the face of difficulty, and without self-pity. Love as both sanctuary and test. His relationships were intense and often turbulent. He learned that tenderness is not weakness, it's a strength you must protect from your own pride. Love in his work is a place you earn, not a place you hide. Put simply, Hemingway learned that language could be truer by saying less, that character is revealed under pressure, and that meaning hides best in what a writer leaves unsaid. The sun also rises, Fiesta what it's about, without spoiling it. Setting and atmosphere. Post-World War I Europe. Paris cafes where night starts at noon. Trains headed south to Spain where the light is harsher, the wine cheaper, and the rituals older than the hangovers. The group at the story's center is young in years and old in disappointment. The crew, a circle of friends orbiting the narrator, funny, wounded, keenly observant, along with a woman whose presence complicates every room and clarifies every heart. They drink, they argue, they dance, they travel, they chase pleasure. but what they're really chasing is a feeling like home. The conflict without the twist. Everyone in this world knows what has been taken from them by war. Some losses are visible, others are not. Desire collides with damage. The story unfolds not through big reveals but through small choices that echo louder than speeches. What you'll notice on the page: calm, precise sentences, dialogues that sound like real people trying not to say what they mean, descriptions that seem simple until you realize what they refuse to dramatize. And when the bulls appear, you'll feel how ritual can temporarily make a chaotic life feel coherent. This is not a plot that depends on a secret, it depends on whether its people can live with themselves when the party ends. Hidden currents in Fiesta. What moves underneath? The lost generation is not lost, it's looking. They appear aimless, but they're searching for a code, some rules for living that don't feel like lies. In Spain, ritual offers them a temporary spine. Desire has a scar. Attraction exists in the book like a beautiful room with a locked door. The lock is not just physical, it is moral and psychological, shaped by trauma. The book asks, can you want someone without ruining yourself? Ritual as salvation, spectacle as trap. Bullfighting is not there to shock, it's there to show how discipline faces danger. But spectacle also numbs. The same ritual that gives meaning can become a drug. Masculinity under interrogation. Bravado collapses, quiet competence survives. Men perform, fail, boast, sulk. The ones who matter choose decency over dominance. Language as ice. What is not said matters. Jokes cover wounds. You learn to read silences, glances, and repetitions as signals, like a seismograph registering a quake you can't see yet. Exile without passports. They all left a country, but the deeper exile is from certainty. Home is sometimes a table with the right company and a morning that doesn't hurt. A farewell to arms. What it's about, without spoiling it. Setting and mood. The Italian front in World War I. Then the spaces where men try to heal and lovers try to find time. There are mountains, rain, mud, and quiet rooms where people try to talk honestly because the world outside is lying loudly. The people at the center. An American in a foreign army. Practical and skeptical. A nurse who understands both care and courage. Friends who joke too much because that's how they keep breathing. Authority figures who believe in slogans more than bodies. The movement of the story. The war gives and takes. Love is found not in safety, but in the spaces carved from danger. The story's power doesn't rest on a twist but on a steady tightening of circumstances that force choices and reveal character. What you'll notice on the page: clean prose that quickens in danger and slows in tenderness. Battles reported without trumpet. Love scenes that refuse to be sentimental and therefore feel more human. Descriptions of weather that are not just weather. Read it for the way it makes you feel what it takes to build something fragile when the world is designed to break it. Hidden currents in a farewell to arms. What the book whispers. Rain is never just rain. Weather is a mood, a forecast, and sometimes a prophecy. You'll sense that certain elements carry a weight bigger than climate. War as bureaucracy of death. The novel is merciless about empty slogans and careless orders. It respects the courage of individuals and doubts the wisdom of institutions. Love as defiance. The relationship at the heart of the book is not a refuge from the world. It is a declaration against it. Tenderness becomes a form of resistance. Language as moral stance. The clipped style is not just style, it's ethics. To write without exaggeration is to honor the dead and the living. You'll see how understatement can be more devastating than lamentation. Fate versus agency. Characters keep making choices, but the world keeps imposing outcomes. The tension between what we do and what happens to us becomes the book's quiet drum. Exile. Again, there is literal desertion in this book, but the deeper leaving is from illusions about glory, about safety, about what it means to be good when tested. The code beneath both books: how to live when the lights go out. Grace under pressure. Courage is not loud, it's efficient. It's getting up, showing up, doing the job cleanly, especially when you're afraid. The dignity of work. Whether it's tending the wounded, tying a fly, or making the perfect pass in the ring, doing things well is a moral act. Truth in economy. Use only the words you must, keep the rest inside, not as a secret but as respect for what can't be smoothed into language. Companionship is home. When home is gone, people are your shelter. The table, the bottle, the conversation, the shared task, these become the new address. Ritual against chaos. Repeated acts done carefully create meaning when metaphysics fails. In that sense, a well-tied knot or a well-poured wine is not trivial, it's a vote against nothingness. Hemingway's world and ours, the parallels that matter. war and moral injury. Then, trenches, shrapnel, propaganda. Now, different fronts, different technologies, same human cost. The shock of realizing institutions can be careless with human life remains. Veterans and civilians alike grapple with invisible wounds. The noise of distraction. Then, cafes, gossip, the next party. Now, feeds, notifications, the next ping. The book's critique of numbness by pleasure feels timely. It asks, what rituals keep you human instead of just occupied? Gender and freedom. Brett Ashley in Fiesta scandalized and dazzled. Today she reads as complex, hungry for autonomy, capable of tenderness, caught in a web of expectations. The debate about agency, desire, and responsibility is still alive. Exile and belonging. Then, passports, borders, and the sense of being out of place after a global trauma. Now, migration, diaspora, and the search for community in unfamiliar cities. The idea that belonging can be built, not inherited, feels urgent. Honesty in language. Then, slogans and war rhetoric. Now, spin, marketing, and curated identities. Hemingway's demand for plain speech lands like a challenge. Can we speak simply enough to be believed? Ritual, sport, and spectacle. Then, bullfights as art and argument. Now, extreme sports, esports, viral challenges, risk and performance as meaning. The question remains, where does real craft end and empty spectacle begin? Love under pressure. Then, love in wartime with censored letters and stolen afternoons. Now, love across time zones and trauma, with too many ways to say too little. What does intimacy look like when the world refuses to slow down? Craft Spotlight, how Hemingway's style does the emotional heavy lifting. The iceberg principle. Only the top tenth of the meaning is visible. The rest is submerged in action, detail, and omission. You, the reader, become a collaborator, finishing the feeling. Declarative sentences, haunted by what's missing. The prose says he poured a drink. Your mind supplies, because the night was long and the voice on the phone had said something that wouldn't leave. He trusts you to meet him halfway. Repetition with variation. Words circle back like a refrain, each time altered by context. It's subtle musicality, the kind that lingers rather than announces itself. Dialogue is fencing. People parry, feint, reveal themselves by what they withhold. If you listen carefully, you'll hear the wound behind the wit. Concrete nouns and verbs. Instead of he was very upset, you get he stood, poured, drank. The body tells the truth the mouth won't. Then and now, how readers and critics received these books. When Fiesta / The Sun Also Rises first appeared, 1926, immediate impact. It felt like a dispatch from a new emotional climate. Readers recognized themselves in the fatigue, the wit, and the attempt to find meaning without grand speeches. Praise for style. Critics admired the clarity and the daring economy, the sensation of a voice that refused to decorate pain. Controversy. Some were scandalized by the frankness, the irreverence, the drinking, and the sexual candor. Others decried the aimlessness as immoral. The debate only made the book more famous. How Fiesta reads now. A modern mirror. Many see it as the archetypal portrait of post-trauma youth resonant after every generation's crisis. Feminist and gender-aware readings. Brett is read as both empowered and trapped. Critics argue fiercely about whether the book critiques or indulges patriarchal double standards. That friction is why it still sparks essays and seminars. Craft admiration. Writers still study its dialogue like a score, how to move a scene with what's unsaid. When A Farewell to Arms first appeared, 1929, shock of realism. Readers were struck by the unsentimental depiction of war and the tender seriousness of the love story. Censorship and bans. Its language and sexual frankness triggered bans in some places. This, predictably, made more people want to read it. Critical split. Many called it the definitive novel of World War I disillusionment from an American pen. Others attacked its morality. The book outlived the outrage. How A Farewell to Arms reads now. A standard for war and love narratives. It remains a benchmark, a tale that refuses either romanticizing war or trivializing love. Close reading of symbols. Modern readers bring psychoanalytic, historical, and trauma-centered lenses, finding new layers in its weather, its hospital rooms, and its silences. Influence on craft. The novel is often taught for its structure, how pacing, omission, and modulation of tone can carry a reader through escalating stakes without melodrama. Hidden doors for deeper readers, connections you might not see at first. Autobiography as compost, not blueprint. Both novels borrow from Hemingway's life, his wartime injuries, his time in Spain, but they don't simply retell events. He turns experience into structure, not confession. The ethics of looking. In both books, spectatorship matters, watching a bullfight, watching a war, watching a lover sleep. The question is always whether watching is enough or a cop-out. Economy as empathy. By refusing to over-explain, Hemingway respects your intelligence and the dignity of his characters. He doesn't tell you how to feel because he thinks you're capable of feeling without instruction. Small meals, big meanings. Eating and drinking scenes aren't filler. They're the only times characters can control something: taste, pace, company. In a chaotic world, a good meal is not indulgence, it's resistance. If you're reading in our present moment, guiding lines and cautions on alcohol and glamour, the books depict a lot of drinking. Read it as symptom and setting, not as instruction. The glamour fades, the ache remains. On gender and harm, some dynamics will feel dated or damaging. This is not a reason to avoid the books, it's a reason to read them alertly, arguing with them where needed. Good literature survives interrogation. On war, Hemingway's war is mud and error as much as courage. If you or someone you love has known conflict, you may find recognition here, and it may be heavy. Pace yourself. On hope. The hope in these books is never naive. It's found in craft, friendship, and moments when someone does the right thing without applause. Why these books still matter, not nostalgia, but use. They teach you to see. After Hemingway, inflated language sounds false. You start noticing when words are working and when they're hiding. They train your courage. Watching characters make choices without guarantees steels you for your own uncertain calls. They refine your taste for meaning. Rituals, routines, careful work. You begin to respect the ordinary acts that keep a life upright. They complicate your empathy. You'll care for people who don't always behave well. That's good practice for real life. Who should read what, and in what order? Start with Fiesta if you love razor-sharp dialogue and group dynamics. You want to feel the texture of a time and place through movement, meals, and quarrels. You're drawn to questions of identity, desire, and post-trauma aimlessness. Start with A Farewell to Arms if you want emotional concentration, a love story under the pressure of history. You're curious how clean prose can carry deep feeling without swelling music. You're ready to think about courage, tenderness, and the price of survival. Read both if you want to watch a writer refine a code for living across different terrains. You care about how private love and public disaster collide. You're ready to hold two truths: that life is brutal and that people can be brave and kind anyway. A brief, captivating passage you can use to open a talk. He wrote as if language were rationed. He wrote as if every adjective had to be earned by a wound. He wrote as if love were a room without curtains in a city at war, and the only way to keep it warm was to keep the stove going and the door locked and to speak in sentences that didn't waste heat. And somehow, by saying less, he gave us more, the feeling that courage could be quiet and that decency could be a kind of grace. Closing argument: why everyone should try Hemingway at least once. Not because he's important, though he is. Not because he changed literature, though he did, but because in a world that rewards noise, he shows you how to be precise. In a world that confuses attention with care, he shows you how to pay attention to what matters. In a world that makes spectacle easy and meaning hard, he gives you a way to build meaning, with work, with honesty, with small rituals, with loyalty to people who have earned it. If you've ever felt exiled from your own life and needed a table that felt like home, read Fiesta. If you've ever tried to love someone while the world burned at the edges of your days, read A Farewell to Arms. And if you've ever wanted a sentence to tell you the truth without shouting, read Hemingway. Then go do your work cleanly, bravely, and with as few wasted words as possible. Optional discussion prompts to ignite your audience. Where in your life do you rely on ritual to make meaning? Which character in either book behaves worst, and why do you still understand them? What does grace under pressure look like in your context? What is something you would say less loudly, but with more truth, after reading these books? A table at dawn, coffee, bread, a river outside the window, two people not talking loudly. The day will demand courage, but for now, there's this: work to do, words to place, a world to face, and you can go and meet it with a calm you didn't know you had until a book taught you how to hold it.